All right, welcome to today's episode of Tomorrow's Leader, where we dive deep on all things leader related. So with those of you who are watching on YouTube, you notice my nice new shiny fancy microphone here. Those of you who are listening, you might say, wow, he sounds just so clear, so incredible. Well, I don't take the credit. That's this fancy microphone. But I almost didn't have this microphone. I had bought it when I started this whole process of doing podcasting. I'm thinking, okay, well, I know there's different levels of them, whatnot. So I have my cheapo one that I've normally been using, and I upgraded and got this one. And I'd been working with a great company, and that had helped me kind of go through the different options, because who am I to know what a good microphone is or what a bad one is? And I had asked and gotten some help along the way from this really great guy, Chris. And Chris was leading me through the whole process and whittling down the different options. And here's what they do. And here's, the type of voice that this one accentuates and this and that. I don't know anything about this. I really don't. And I'll be very honest with you. So help has been much appreciated. And Chris certainly was there at the right time. So he led me through this whole process. I got what I have now in front of me, which is the Neumann TLM 107. Great microphone. But when I got it, I hooked it up, started using it. And I'm like, God, this thing sucks. It's horrible. Like literally, it sounded tinny. I was really disappointed. I mean, so much to the point, I'm like, maybe I'm doing something wrong. I don't know if I'm not hooking it up right. I called up Chris. I'm like, Chris, you got to walk me through this like step by step. And he did. He was great, super patient. And I must have had, no joke, I think, 10 calls for this poor guy. And I'm frustrated. I'm like, listen, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I don't know. And he's telling me all this, high-tech stuff of, okay, well, do you have this and that, blah, 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 and this dialed in or whatever. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, Chris, you gotta help me here. So we're going through. And again, I actually went back to my other microphone, which is this guy here. And I'm like, my $60 mic sounds much better than this fancy schmancy one. And Chris was like, well, I don't get it. That shouldn't be the case. And I was playing him clips and sending them to him. He's like, yeah, it doesn't sound good. So he's on the phone with me and we're going through. He's like, you need this special, I have a whole bunch of equipment here, this amplifier thing. I've got these programs on my computer. And he's like, I think you need this other plug-in or whatever. So, we loaded it on. He led me through the whole process of setting the dials. And another half-hour process. I thought we got it right, and he's telling me to try it, and it doesn't sound better. I'm like, Chris, dude, I appreciate your help, man, but honestly, I just want to return the thing, and I'll just get something else. This is just not the mic for me. And Chris said, well, let me ask you a question. I don't mean to insult you with this question, but are you speaking into the side with the red label on it? And I'm like, what red label are you talking about? And I look in the back and there's a red label in the back. I'm like, you're talking about the red label in the back? He's like, well, no, I think we figured out what the problem is, John. You're speaking into the back of the microphone. The red label actually should be facing you, not away from you. I'm like, what? Really? Okay, well, I guess that's the problem then. I've been speaking into the wrong end of the microphone. Okay, great. All right, terrific. Nice. So I turned it around and what do you know? I've got this great microphone now. So simple solution to what was a ridiculously complex problem. I will tell you, 10 calls, I had him exasperated. I finally figured it out. Obviously, it was like, wow, this was life-changing with my relationship with this microphone and my relationship with Chris, too. So thank you, Chris, for being out there hanging with me. But I will say, it made me think. I'm like, how many times do we create or try to look for these unbelievably complex problems with, in reality, there's simple solution in front of us. Sometimes we go through these unbelievable extents to find a solution that we think is really complicated or solve a problem that we think is really complicated, and the solution is right there in front of us. And it's the easiest thing we probably could have looked at. All I needed to do was try. I don't even know why I would have thought, okay, yeah, the label, it looks nice. I'm talking right into it now. Why wouldn't it be facing me? Why would I think the back of the microphone was the front? I don't know. I think I'm a pretty smart guy, but not with this stuff. But that was this whole problem for whatever many weeks, and ready to send it back. So, and there's all kinds of different examples of this. I heard about a story with a 18-wheeler that got caught under an overpass. And it always fascinates me. I'm driving next to these things and there's like an inch or two of room. And so it's not a lot of margin of error. Well, one got stuck and it got halfway through and couldn't go forward or backwards. And it's tying up traffic and all kinds of stuff. And for like half an hour, a bunch of people and adults are all gathering around and trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? How do we pull it? Do we push it? How do we get this tractor trailer out so that ultimately the roads can clear and traffic can go by? Well, it was actually after a half an hour or an hour, I don't know what it was, an 8-year-old girl who came up with the solution to the problem. And she said, well, what would happen if we let the air out of the tires? And the adults said, that's actually a brilliant idea. And they did it, and they got the tractor trailer dislodged from underneath the overpass, and the traffic resumed. Again, another example, like there's the basic, most easiest solution to that problem. A bunch of adults, really smart adults, couldn't figure it out, but an 8-year-old girl came up with that solution. So there's just all kinds of examples. I've heard another story where it was a toothpaste company that had some sort of a problem with its manufacturing, and it was putting together toothpaste somehow, and it wasn't filled. It was empty boxes, or empty cartons rather, of toothpaste, and obviously a major glitch, because it wouldn't take very many times for consumers to lose faith in that company if that got out there and whatnot. So the company was frustrated. It couldn't figure out the problem and the mechanical glitch in that. So it came up with all sorts of a weight sensing device that would weigh each one as it went through the conveyor belt, and as it went through and it didn't weigh that certain amount, alarms would go off and somebody would manually have to go to it and take that and get rid of that. And that was the process. But they had factories all over the place. So it was like, there was inconsistency and some were slipping through. And they noticed that one factory had 0 defects. I mean, literally every single one of them, they eliminated the problem altogether, while these other factories were not. And they went to this one factory and said, well, how are you doing this? Like, is your sensor set up differently, or is it wired differently, or what are you doing? And as it turned out, when they inspected it, what had happened was the one of the shift workers that was at the manning the assembly line there got so aggravated by that sound, he decided he would take a fan and point it at the conveyor belt, and it would blow off the boxes that didn't have enough weight and naturally into the trash. And so this fan solved all the problems that this incredibly expensive weight sensing, these sensors were put in place to do. And it was a simple solution by a guy who was frustrated by the buzzing that this created, this complex solution created to solve the problem. So again, the biggest issue is we sometimes search for an answer that is so complicated, and in reality, the answer is right in front of us. Have we explored every possible easy solution? Have we explored the easiest, most obvious solution that would work before we've gone to all these complex things? And I don't care, whatever it is, sometimes if you're running a company or an organization and you've got issues that, or you've got difficulties with people, or you've got systems that are broken, or you've got customer or consumer issues, or you've got culture problems, whatever the case may be, there's oftentimes a simple solution. Maybe it's one conversation that would solve a problem versus a long drawn out set of meetings and processes and communication plans. Oftentimes the solution is staring us right in the face, and it's easy. It's easy to solve. It's switching the microphone around. It's not doing anything crazy. No more programs and tinkering and calls with Chris. It's turning my microphone around. That was it. I mean, there are some problems that have speed is of the essence. You have to make a decision and you have to solve it fast. I mean, I think about Sully with Flight 159, where every second matters and lives are in your hands. And thank God he was in charge and made great decisions and came up with a solution very fast. But in most cases, the problems that we don't have a ticking clock, and we can actually take some time to think through. It's interesting. I was talking to a teacher recently who was talking about with their school how they were trying and they were exploring all kinds of crazy ways to try to dissuade kids from using their phone and using the internet and jamming the signal and somehow, all these complicated things, when one of the students said, well, why don't we just put our phones in a basket or something like that when we walk in? And the teacher's thought was, well, yeah, I guess that would be good. I guess we assumed that they wouldn't want to, or they'd fight that or whatnot. Sometimes we think that the answer, which may be the easiest one, we're going to have pushback on or whatnot, when in reality, if we just have the conversation, it's an easy solution. So the biggest thing that I've learned is that oftentimes if I take a step back and look at the situation, look at the problem, and just almost think like a kid would think and say, okay, what's the most basic, easy, possible solution that could work? And let's take a look at that first and see if that can work. And maybe that's the best choice there is to make. So, lesson for today's episode: the solutions to your problems oftentimes are a lot easier than you make them out to be up here. And you waste time, you waste energy, we waste emotional strength and mental capacity, and that distracts us from doing all the great things that we can and being productive in business and relationships and life and enjoying things, because we tend to make these little problems into like these gigantic ones because we're searching for a solution that's a lot more complicated than it needs to be. So for what it's worth, that's my 10-minute segment today on finding the easy but effective solution to your problems. So thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to make sure you share, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.